Happy belated holidays, everybody. And soon to be Happy New Year. So I didn't make a video for some days. I was helping a friend out with an art project, and I'm back with a video. I forget if this is number 4, maybe number 5. I think it's number 4. And this is gonna be a little bit, I don't know how to say it. No specific focus here exactly, but I'm going to touch on a few points. Some I've mentioned before, some might be new, but these are all worth focusing in on. So yeah, just these might answer questions. Think of it maybe like a top 10 FAQ. I don't know if there's 10. There might be more, but I'll start with small language models. So I got paper notes here, so that's why I might look down every now and then. Why are they important? Why are they cool? Why, when all of big tech is spending multi-millions to build really large models, how is there any value for small language? So the way we're using them and the way that they're used for agents, is that we really only need the language model for the ability to do reasoning, like basic logic, and have a conversation, have a conversation that's understood in both directions. And it's when you are building a huge language model that knows everything, shooting for the stars with AGI, you end up with these really high costs, this need for huge infrastructure, and it's great, go for it. But there's also the flip side of that, which is a model that is kind of a blank slate and survives only on RAGs. RAGs is I've heard it described a couple of different ways, but it's retrieval and generation, or retrieval augmented generation. It basically means that you give a model some very specific info so that it can be a specialist. And this kind of is what gave rise to the concept of agents, I think. I don't know if that's true, but the two fit together so well. So let's say, here's an example. Let's say we're using something like Ollama 3.2. It's not very intelligent about the world. It doesn't know a ton of stuff, but it's really good at having a basic conversation with you. And when you give it a RAG, that is a database of knowledge that it ingests about any given subject, it becomes an expert in that area. So you could make it a biology expert or an astrophysicist or, whatever. Feed it a bunch of books. Feed it, I don't know, how to be an anesthesiologist specifically in Mexico. If there's something specific to Mexico, it'll know that really well. So that's what RAGs do for any model, but it's especially interesting to me about why we would use a small model. It's because hallucinations can be eliminated, either almost eliminated or entirely, because the model just doesn't know stuff, and you could tell the model, don't try to answer if you don't know. If you don't know, say you don't know, and then it's pretty binary whether it knows or not, because you're starting with a blank slate. So that's really helpful, especially when you're dealing with agents that have wallets. You don't want them kind of knowing something and acting on it, right? So, the model only really knows what's taught in that case, and we could be really discreet about what we're teaching it. It's super specific. So that's the win for small language models. And also, if we want to run things at the edge, if we want to run things on device, we're not doing that today, but it's going to be really important for the deep end, where we're running many agents on GPUs, but we're not running them on data center GPUs. We're running them on a decentralized network. And so it's really helpful to be as efficient as possible. The small language model is one part of that efficiency. Another part of that efficiency is doing things like RAG switching, which basically switches a personality from one character to another, and that you combine those two, and we end up with a workflow that's really slim and can work on lesser devices. So, moving on. Also about agents. This is going to be pretty agent heavy, I think, from here on out. Tools use. You can define an agent. One of the definitions of it is that you can give it tools. So one kind of tool we give it is a tap wallet, right? That's a tool. It can't do transactions without having that wallet and without knowing how to use that wallet, right? So your agent, which maybe was just a chatbot a moment ago, now has the ability to receive and send and spend. So that's an example of a tool. But other examples of tools is Twitter, Telegram, Discord. Features of Taparoo Swap are going to go in there. Being able to have access in real time to news feeds, web scraping. So it's like super up to date on stuff, right? And can follow personalities or I guess influencers online and act accordingly. Find projects that maybe didn't hit your radar because you're not watching, but the agent is watching 24/7 across a whole spectrum of channels. So, it's just going to do a better job of casting that wide net. And then finally, fiat. So I'm working on fiat also working. That's not through Tap Wallet, of course. Tap is going to be crypto only, but it's going to be interesting to be able to see that Intel dipped like crazy. Go buy some Intel if you're into stonks. If you're not, maybe you're into some other uses of fiat, and that's there too. I think traditionally we've always seen stables as a stand-in for fiat, but sometimes stables just don't fit the bill. So that's there. Let's see what else I got. So anything requiring a real-time transaction needs not be known, or I said that weird. I said that like William Shakespeare. It doesn't need to be known until the moment the transaction happens. So this is called a one-shot, and AI tries to get away from one-shot NLP or natural language processing because memory is better. You can have a more realistic conversation when there's a bunch of memory. But there's some cases where we might want things to be a one-shot, and that is we get to on the agents I'm building anyway. We have a long memory. We have a really long memory conversationally, and it can learn from its conversations in kind of like epochs. But there are some things like actual financial transactions that we may want to treat as a one-shot and maintain a knowledge of things like keys just during the transaction and then forget it. The DPIN provides some attributes we can consider zero knowledge. I heard the terms zero knowledge agents recently from Guy on what the hell is that? I always forget the name of the YouTube channel. Coin Bureau, that's it. So he mentioned it. I think he meant it a different way, but I like it. I'm adopting it. ZK agents is a pretty interesting way to look at what an agent does when they're one shot and when they're using small language models, right? So we can start applying some of the philosophies of crypto being trustless to an agent. And, the DPIN having physical infrastructure lets us treat our agents as trustless and as zero knowledge. And in a way, we could apply concepts of like sharding or subnets to them also. And this becomes really powerful because nobody's doing this right now. Everybody's still having fun. In the world of virtuals or ELIZA, it's like they're moving fast, but I think it's a lot of fun use cases that are interesting. They're creating the path. It's frontier stuff, right? But I think I'm not seeing a lot of kind of infrastructure thinking and long-term kind of de-risking in the thought process here. So I figure that's what I want to do, and that's what's going to differentiate us always. And so we're planning our flag on really leveraging having a DPIN. And it's, one way this plays out is that it's clear that an agent is on our network, right? And I've mentioned this in a prior video. We are building kind of an internet on the internet, and we know everything about the machines from which these agents originate. So the bare metal computer, we know what CPU is in there, and we know the ID of that unique ID of that CPU. We know everything about the graphics card, the RAM. We have great detail. So we know if a machine's been messed with. We know if the owner of that computer had their hands in it, recently and are making changes. And these can all be red flags for us. So we know about the physical hardware. The network is ours, so we know about all the traffic going across our network, and we know, an agent that's not on our network, it's very clear that it isn't, and so it's impossible for us to do any kind of transactions with spoofs from outside the network. It's just not possible. In fact, every agent is kind of like its own IP address and operating as its own computer in a way on the internet. So your computer at home, you get a dynamic IP address from your internet provider, right? Back in the day, going way back, every computer had a static IP. Every computer that was on the internet, this was mostly in academia, they had static IPs. And not only did you see a static IP in a URL, unlike Mozilla or early Netscape, you might see the full path on their hard drive to the file you're accessing with the full path down to the HTML file or whatever file you were accessing. And nothing was hidden behind any kind of dynamic system. Today, everything's dynamic, right? Your router sits on its own local area network, and your computer further sits behind firewall or whatever, right? So the idea is that each agent is almost and I don't know if we'll issue actual IP addresses that look like an IP address, like an IP4 or an IP6, or if I just stick to inscription IDs, because that is each agent's unique name. I might just treat inscription IDs as IP addresses and then be able to make kind of subnets out of those, right? Anyway, that's still being figured out. I don't know what's best until we test at some scale, and that's soon, right? But for now, I'm just using inscription IDs from the HIROS collection for my testing, and it all works great. It's, I can count on them being unique. So going back to zero knowledge. So the agent doesn't need to know anything until it retrieves that RAG and what it's supposed to do. It's a blank slate of a robot until it needs to spring into action, right? And we need them springing into action 24/7, but we can do kind of like agent switching or character switching, right? The whole reason that they exist can change on the fly. And I don't know if anybody's up on this term that's going around called butter passing, and I love it because it's a Rick and Morty reference. And it refers to pass the butter. There's a little robot on a dinner table, and Rick says pass the butter. The robot does, and it wonders what its purpose is. And Rick says, "You pass butter. That's your purpose." And it gets depressed, and he's like, "Yeah, welcome to the club, pal." So anyway, it's going off topic a bit, but but the agents, we get to kind of go from passing the butter to having really very specific tasks and complex threads of tasks. So we know what a transaction looks like at the network and the bare metal level, and that informs this whole concept of what ZK means in an agentic context, right? There's an inscription ID. That's what you hold, right? That's the thing that belongs to you in your wallet. and it's the name of the agent. Let's call it an IP address of sorts. And that agent is the holder of its own wallet and keys. You don't have access to those keys. You can talk to your agent, though, and it knows who you are. And all agents know each other because they're on the same network. And there's kind of this trusted execution environment, but not in software like most people talk about TEEs. This is a physical TEE. So agents are able to interact with each other, and we don't need a human UI or UX. We don't need human checks because the agents are doing this on their own agentic layer, and they know that they're all family. So that's really important. So Big Noodle Hong Kong is set up for token issuance. And I spoke to an international tax attorney recently, and I was just, I wanted to ask about the implications of a wallet under an agent. And the conversation was brief because there's no laws around it. Tornado Cash was a pretty important court case recently that nobody's talking about, but it's pretty important in that we now have a precedent that says legally software can hold digital assets. The software or the smart contract doesn't have to be held by humans on either side of that contract. Contract is kind of actually a bad misnomer in that it confused the people involved with the court case who were not crypto knowledgeable. And so when they heard contract, they thought, oh, people have to hold contracts. But a smart contract's really different. It's just software. And if it's open source and immutable and no one can change it, then yeah, digital assets can be stored within it, kind of like a trust. And if you want to use some traditional terminology as an analogy. So that's a big deal because that means the agents, which are software, can hold the digital assets and it's not connected to a person. There's an air gap between you and your wallet with the agent and its wallet, right? And you're able to fund and defund that wallet, but there's an air gap there. There's no tax implications, and there can be privacy between those two. So that pretty much starts to have implications with conversations around capital gains, but also, maybe it's not just a financial conversation. Maybe it's a privacy conversation. And I think that's pretty interesting. And yeah, what the attorney said basically was, well, the Tornado Cash win is not a law yet. It might lead to law, and you have a precedent that you can use if you had to defend yourself, right, in a courtroom. And it was like, the good thing is you have that now, whereas the opposing side doesn't have any such precedent to make their claims and be on the flip side of that fight. Anyway, I'm not planning on being in any such type of court case, but in an effort to, keep abreast and stay on top of where our opportunities are and what it means, what laws mean to the future of agents and AI and agentic labor. It's I think it's pretty important, and or it can be, and we'll keep on top of it for sure. All right, I think that's it for today. This was not super organized set of thoughts, kind of like the other ones. But yeah, I figured it'll be good to just like do a bit of a brain dump. And I want to also respond to one person from the Discord, Joda God, I think it was, not a name I've seen before. So welcome. And they were talking about HIROS from the storytelling and video production point of view. Like when that kicks back up, like there's a request to do something with an anime style, something that kind of spoke to an Asian audience, and I'm all for it because I'm an otaku for many years, like for better or for worse. That's been an obsession for a long time, and so I'm into it, and I love the art style, but I also thought that the power of using Stable Diffusion on the back end and it's part of this whole project too, is that it could do such photoreal stuff in these tiny, really efficient inscriptions. So the inscription ID is the seed for the photoreal high-res artwork. And the best way to show that was for it to be photorealistic. I don't know if it would have had the same impact if it was like line art, if it was a manga style, if it was an anime style, or anything less than photorealism, actually. So I think the artwork needed to come out as photorealistic for that reason, to really show off that this generative art isn't stored anywhere, and it's this high of a quality for only the footprint of an inscription, right? But I think I promised it publicly before, but if not, I'm doing it now. So I made a new reveal page a while back, and the purpose of it is to show a bunch of different styles. This also shows off how the inscription ID is doing everything generatively. There will be anime, and there is like a fine art style, and there is, maybe some that kind of mimic other projects that are on other chains, but it's still your inscription ID, and it looks like your character, or it's based on the same ingredients that makes your hero is going to be reimagined in another style. And some are more PFP friendly, because we don't really have that. That's one of the downsides of HIROS. It's so detailed and such a full picture that a PFP is difficult to pull from it. And also videos. So we're going to end up with some fun. They'll be kind of short, they'll be brief, but it'll be like maybe an action scene or maybe a reveal scene of a character. And this still all comes from the same inscription ID. It's not like a new batch of any kind. It's just playing with the workflow that makes the artwork. And so, Jodagat, thanks for that question or suggestion. What you're asking for is going to happen in that form. It'll take place in that way. And I think, and I would really love to be able to speak more to the Asian community. I've seen tweets in the past, which are all in Chinese, and I didn't, I had friends translate it for me, and I didn't ask for that to be done, but it was done, and I was really happy about it, and I'd love to kind of pick that up and, and keep that going, in Spanish too. The agents are multilingual, but I'm not, so up till now I needed help with this kind of thing. So yeah, future's bright for being able to speak a lot more than English, that's for sure. All right, thank you all. See you soon. If I don't make another video this coming week, then Happy New Year. But yeah, I'll try to. Catch you later. Peace.